think this opportunity that we're faced with in the journey of aloha is to understand that those lessons will help structure our journey so that we are successful.
Our entire One World Ohana connected heart to heart through pure aloha.
Aloha mai. Aloha aku. Aloha mai. Aloha aku. Aloha mai.
Hearing more about what everyone has to offer and learning from each other.
Aloha aku, aloha mai, the two faces of aloha. To give and to receive. It goes out and it comes back.
If you are interested in learning more about aloha, learning more about how you can connect with other people, I think this would be a good opportunity because different people of different ages come with thoughts that promote what you are doing. So I think you should join us because it'll be an experience that you'll never forget.
Aloha is about leaving people full. It's about leaving a place better than when we found it.
Knowing how to be in community, how to feed people, how to come together.
We're going through the greatest transformation since Copernicus discovered that the sun does not revolve around the earth. We know from physics that we are all connected energetically. That's who we are. We're connected just like all our atoms and molecules and all the energy are connected.
But I would like to make two other comments, one related to Antipilahi. The first one is the story that you were talking about, the basketball. I heard the story that when the Dalai Lama first saw volleyball played American style, he cried. What do you mean? They're trying to get the ball to hit the ground? Us guys, when we play volleyball, we try to keep them up as long as possible. A matter of deep culture. A matter of deep culture. The second story is, Pua and I, Pua, my wife back there, some would say my boss, but we try to work together. Pua and I was sitting with Auntie Pilahi late at night, I don't know, maybe it was 1 o'clock in the morning at her house. And Pua was very active with Protect Kaho'olawe Ohana, the PKO. And she said, Auntie Pilahi, I have a question for you. And so she said, yeah, what's the question? She says, well, we on Kaho'olawe, we put one post in the ground. The question we have is, what direction should the second post face relative to the first post? Should we be concerned about the winds, the sun direction, this, and that? How would our ancestors have done it? Auntie Pilahi responded by, Ovai oi, who are you? That's one weird answer. So Pua says, what do you mean? I'm Pua Nani. Are you not the child of your ancestors? Of course, by definition, yeah. Do you not possess the same intellectuality, the same senses, smell, touch, vision? Yeah, I do. Then why are you trying to follow your ancestors just because they did it? Suppose they did it wrong. You need to have enough trust in yourself and don't try to continually replicate ancestors merely for the sake that they are ancestors. As we move into our futures, trust in your own wisdom, your own intellectuality. Measure the circumstance that you have at the present time. You can go back into our past, but don't use the past as a chain that anchors us into the past, but use it as a springboard to inform and to push ourselves into the future. So I started thinking, I was asked to write a chapter. I don't know how many of you know Johann Galtung. He was, you know Johann. Yeah, he was reaching his 80th birthday, so they asked some people to write chapters about peace studies. And they said, it has to be something new, not something old that you wrote before. So I was figuring, oh, what the heck am I going to write about now? So I wrote an article, and it's called the 2035 edition of the Traveler's Guide to Hawaii. Because I was wondering, where are our prophets? You know, before time we had all these prophets who could tell us what was going to happen and what should happen and all this stuff. Today, where are our prophets? No more prophets. And then I started reflecting what Auntie Pilahi said. Ovai oi, who are you? You are, in fact, our prophets for our future. So I told myself, I hope it's not too vulgar, but I said, oh, what the hell? I'm going to be one prophet, and I'm going to prophesize what Hawaii is going to look like 25 years from now as my gift to Johan. And I said, you know, for those of you who have not been here, this is 2035 now. Yeah, I wrote it a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. For those of you who have not been to Hawaii over the last 25 years, you'll be surprised that Hawaii is now an independent nation following the collapse of the American Empire. But as we moved into the formation of a new independent nation, the question more important was, what is the foundation upon which we build? Not the canoe, but we build a society. And then you begin the analysis, and then you begin the dreaming. And so what I did was I talked about what Waianae will look like as a small, what do you call it? Not microcosm, just that stuff that you know, you get one big glass, you take a piece of the glass and you can see a hologram, yeah. And so Waianae is merely a holographic view of what all of Hawaii is from the Waianae perspective. So I was talking to Sister Kavehi over there. Hey, you got to write one on Waimanalo, and other people need to write one on all the different communities that you come from. And we need to begin that dream, and we need to put it down, and so that we can share our vision with others and be our prophets as we move to the future.
The hero's journey metaphor you can think of as that software, as that algorithm that is open source. You make it what you want. In its simplest form, it's separation, initiation, and return. So separation from your village, your community, your island, setting sail in our other metaphor, and then entering the deep water or the dark forest, where you encounter all kinds of obstacles and helpers that are unique to you. Now, why are they unique to you? Because the medieval literature would say each knight entered the forest where it was darkest and there was no path. Because to go on a path would not be to live the adventure and not to be open to the way that the winds blew you and what you saw, but to follow someone else's path. And in this sort of metaphoric envisioning of the human experience, because we go through it every night in miniature, we leave our waking world, we enter a world that is the dreamscape, and we come out. And for Joe Campbell, these dreams are private myths, and myths are, in a sense, the cultural dreams, these tables that we build. But we have to live into them to dream them. And in the story, then, we come to a point where we encounter an ultimate obstacle. It's frequently, in a lot of the old legends, it's a dragon. You know, and we fight the dragon. We have a dragon. Tim, would you bring the dragon in for a second here? So we fight this fierce dragon, but then ultimately we have to lay down the sword and surrender, and the dragon gives us the jewel. Well, what's the jewel or the boon? It's the thing that caused us to set sail, the thing that was missing in our home culture that we didn't have on that island, okay? Let's put him right down here. Thank you. Now, this is Cookie. Cookie had some cookies for me, but gave up the boon. Why did I bring this out? Okay, because in these adventures, humor is the hallmark of the mythic. If we don't have humor, because the human condition on some level is very funny, yes. If we don't have humor, we have theology, or we have philosophy. We don't have mythology. And if anyone's ever taken an upper level course in the university, those philosophy and theology courses are pretty boring, okay? But the stories are rich, okay? The stories are rich. And we revision very simple things. If you look at this ferocious animal that's now been revisioned purple, it's, you start to say, wait a minute, that's a dragon? But all the stories are that. My dragon is your mouse. We're each the hero. I was given this dragon. Okay, it is the year of the dragon. I'll tell you, this is the third conference this year. At the first one, I had a dragon I'd had for 10 years. I brought it and gave it away, okay? And I was given another dragon, which I took to the second conference, and I gave it away. Golly, I mean, I flew over the Great Water, I arrived here, and I was given this dragon. You see, the point being, though, that these mythological creatures, it's the story they bring, okay? What do we have when we come back from these adventures? We have the stories. And hopefully they're significant enough that we're willing to pass them on. And that someone loves us enough that they're willing to listen. And if you think about those animals in the cave, you think what it took to put them there. And if I were to say to you, in one sentence, give me one sentence that you wish to be passed down to your children's 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 children to the 60th generation, what would it be? And if I told it to Steve and said, pass it around the room, like telephone, that old game, what would come out the other end? So when you hear these stories, either the classic ones or ones from your friends that seem very simple, think of them as very rich because they've cooked a long time. And they come from deep within the energies in the human being responding to the world in which they live. And they do carry on, and some of them are hard to unpack. But I'll leave you with one great example. The tsunami that swept through some years ago. Wade Davis reported one island where everyone survived. And when he asked why they survived, they said that from their grandmothers, 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 from the time they were children, had said to them, if the sea runs away from you, run away from the sea. And when the tide receded, they all ran up. Didn't know why, never experienced, never heard it. Everyone on the island survived. Now, that's a myth, right? The sea runs away from you. That's a myth.
Well, this is a nice segue to bring us back to Hawaii in that the original guardian of the Hawaiian Islands was the mo'o. And the mo'o is, in fact, the Hawaiian dragon, the lizard. And so when you look at the mountains, we call it kuamo'o, or the backbone of the dragon. And so that plays very well. And also for those of you that came out of the 60s, Puff was from Hawaii. Because they say Hanali, but it's Hanalei on the island of Kauai. So it all brings us back to our voyage here now. And I want to thank my panel. You have last comment?
It has to pass through me before it gets to you. And as we talk about the dragon from the past, the mo'o, and at times in Hawaii you hear the term the mo'o, the future. The mo'o is in the shape of a fetus, and it's a description of the fetus. And in the more poetic sense, when we talk about the kauna level, the mo'o is the fetus inside that fetus. So when you talk poetically about the future generations, that term, mo'o, again, the dragon appears. It must be more Chinese than European because they're loving dragons rather than the European angry dragon. Yeah. That's all.
I want to, actually, what I was thinking of, Bob, when you were talking was Mark Twain tells the story of the young man who leaves home. And of course he's, couldn't stand his father and all that. And he slays his dragons, and he finally comes back home, and he hears his father talking. He said, "Wow, Dad, you learned a lot while I was gone." And of course, it's a story of growing up, of how the young man, the dragon, he's got to go slay his own dragons, right? He can't hear wisdom from his father. He has to slay his own dragons before he can mature. And that is the story of evolution again and again and again. It's the story of maturation. It's the story of the adventure of youth, which is expansive, competitive, creative. All our best technologies came out of warfare, right? And then we bring them to peaceful use. This is the story of Earth life. Life does this. It goes in cycles from youth to maturity, again and again. And as I said, I'll tell that story from a scientific perspective on tomorrow. I think we're doing science. And then on Monday, we'll do it as business. It's all life. It's all maturity. We all get to grow up now, once again, to form global family. That's what's on the agenda for us. And we can do it because it's always now and we can live it now. And this is a time when we're so used to prediction. We want to know. I get asked every day, I get asked in my travels, wherever I am, what's coming down the pike? What's going to happen next? Same friend that I, who knows about, can talk to animals, can also see from other levels. She says, Elizabeth, the game is rigged from other levels. You don't get to predict anymore. This is the wave of life flowing in its own direction, and you are it. You are that wave. And you don't predict now, you dream and create. That's what it's about. Does it matter to you when exactly the ATM machines will stop functioning? Yeah, on some level it does. But forget it, because you're not going to know which day that's going to happen, and you need to be prepared for it now. And I believe in Hawaiian independence, but what does that mean? I said 2 decades ago, I think, here in Hawaii, for God's sake, start growing your own food and stop importing it. I'm on an island with the same problem, an island that grew 80% of its food 2 generations ago and now imports 95%. That means that the money you earn in Hawaii goes offshore. If 80% of your food is imported, 80% of your food dollar goes offshore, right? It doesn't stay in your economy to keep it going. So independence is about self-sufficiency as much as saying to the big boss, we don't want you anymore, right? Because you don't want to say that until you can survive. We don't want the world to collapse until we can survive. It doesn't do us any good to say, oh, those evil bad guys at the top who are doing this to us, forget that. It's, are we the good guys? Then grow our own food and treat each other well and set up businesses with a different kind of model, and that's what we're here to talk about this weekend. We are here as co-creators of our own future who don't need to know. Well, the reason it's better even not to know is because you create it. There are infinite possibilities for futures. I'll just end with one little story. I was at an Indian powwow once, and they had all these exhibits around and food booths and stuff, and somebody had exhibited something called the Snellen map. It was a beautiful laminated map of the United States where the Rockies were the west coast because the rest of it had slid into the ocean. And this guy named Snellen made this map and passed it around and said this was his prediction of the future. And this couple, the woman was saying, honey, look at this. Look at this map. This is what's going to happen. And she looked at me and she said, look at it. I said, not in my world. She said, what do you mean? She said, this is going to happen. I said, not in my world. I believe that there are infinite possibilities. We're always in the now. We are creating our future, and I ain't going there. So my future has a pretty good outcome. Welcome to my canoe.
Micah. You know, on that note, I don't know if all of you read that if you follow the pre-Columbian calendar, the world is supposed to end December 21st. No, what they found out is that they found an addendum to that calendar, and now the predictions go to 3,500. So feel safe and live your life and get on that canoe and let's go. Thank you very much to our panel members for an excellent dialogue.
Great, thank you. Again, what a nice way to start our voyage and launching out with these perspectives and thoughts. Now it's going to be our turn to share with one another. What did this conversation spark in you? What questions? What thoughts? Equally important, what do you feel called to do? Which is part of the hero's journey. We're going to be taking a break here shortly at about 11. But we're going to ask you to break out into small little groups, 3 to 5 people, probably no more than that, but given the number of people that are here. And that's just simply getting up and taking your chairs to a little corner or someplace. Consider the hero's journey. Consider where we are on our voyage and the input that we're here. So if you take a look at our screen, I borrowed from our Olelo no Iao, Hawaiian Proverbs, by Auntie Kovena Pukui, who, interesting enough, as a young girl was told, don't write this kind of stuff down. She was told that it was inappropriate for her to be taking this knowledge down because that was not her place. And so she would be under the table writing things down, and thankful to her, we have this manao, this ike. The hero's journey, called to adventure. We've been called, each of you, each of us, been called to this adventure. In ancestral times, Auntie tells us about this Olelo no Iao, the bird that calls the canoe to sail, kamana kahea, kahea to call. Ikawa'a e holo, let's go. This bird, it speaks to this particular bird, and on our island we have another bird. It is called manu o ku. It is a white bird with a really deep black eye. And because of their feeding patterns, their feeding habits, they would look for the birds. When they're on land, there's certain times when they head out to sea, and they only do that when the winds are right or when the fish are available. And so the voyagers would know then it's time to go fishing or to travel. They would follow the call of the birds. So we've all been called. But the question is, what are we going to follow? And I think the point was well made. Sometimes many of us get comfortable walking in the footsteps of our ancestors. In fact, many of us take great comfort in being there, so much so that we're uncomfortable when it comes to the end of that path. The question is, when we get to the end, to the last step that our ancestors took, and you're standing there now looking down at empty space, do we find comfort and turn around and follow the footsteps again? Or do we do as the first canoe voyagers did, with courage and commitment, take the next step? Because while there's comfort in walking in the footsteps of our ancestors, eventually that creates a rut. Many of us are in a rut, whether it's culturally, economically, socially, or even spiritually. The opportunity is to listen to the call, take the first next step, and trust that our ancestors got us to where we need to be. And if they were wrong, as Poka suggests, we have an opportunity to correct. To ho'oponopono. This also asks us to look at, I'm not sure if I can change it. Can you change it? There you go. This is an image of Maupiailug, the master navigator that renewed our understanding of this ancient skill and practice of traversing the freeways and highways of the Pacific. Here he looks down at a map that he uses for teaching. But this is a question that Nainoa shared with us that he was posed. And the question was, can you see the island? So last night was ho'omakaukau, to prepare. Today we set the sail plan. We need to see the island. This conversation was talking about the future. What does that future look like? Poka's future island, your future island. So our exercise when we break up is to ask these questions. You have been called. We are on the canoe. What does that island look like? But equally important, what does an island look like when we are living in a life and in a community where we're serving others as much as we serve ourselves. We have the opportunity to do, as one man says, the best way to predict the future is to create it. We have the opportunity to do that here, in the now. Answer the call and see the island. What does that look like? What does it hold for us? What does it hold for others? There is also this notion in the hero's journey about supernatural aid, of a receiving support from outside of us. Likewise, our ancestors acknowledged lele kaiva, malie kai ko'o. This notion that the Eva bird only sails and flies at certain times. When the frigate bird flies out to sea, the rough sea will grow calm. That might be a good time to go. If he's going, I'm going. He's not going, Allah, I'm staying home. All right? This is about observing. This is about respecting. It is about acknowledging that we are part of this larger family, this larger system. Yes, answer the call. See the island and the destination, but acknowledge that those that know can teach. It's not always us telling them. And sometimes we have to come back to the acknowledgement that we are all part of this larger family. These were the first residents of this place. And somehow we can learn from them. So in our exercise, we need to get past this first break. We need everyone to paddle. This is your opportunity. The hero's journey says, let's cross that first threshold. We've got to get beyond the reef. And so in this first break that we take this morning, you're invited to gather in small groups so that there is dialogue and that we can actually come up with things. And we invite you to enjoy the coffee, but enjoy the bean as well. What's the seed that we need to plant? What's that thing that we'll take with us? We will then come back, and for those of you that want to share with the rest of us what it is you see that island looking like. What does that look like? Will we know it when we see it? Or have we already passed it? If we don't know what it looks like, we may never be able to see it. And more importantly, as one person said, every atoll becomes a destination if you don't know what the island looks like. All right? So this is your challenge, our challenge.
Ke yo kalania me ka honu